This video is for documentary purposes only. Anything shown here is in legal states, 100% legal. Nothing shown is harmful or dangerous. So you may have seen my recent video about the new genetics that I'm growing. And they're old school genetics, technically, but they're new genetics to me. And this was the skunk one. However, you may not want to grow it too if you don't know this information first. Stay tuned.
Like we always do about this time.
Now, if you're new here, my name is Rob and we talk all things herb. Today in particular, we're going to be talking about some key things you should know if you're going to be growing old school genetics. Now, unfortunately, these days, things just haven't retained that old classic pure feel. And a lot of times I feel it happens to be either watered down genetics, replicas, knockoffs, complete shams, or potentially it's our environment and the way that we're growing. Now, there is some science to back this, and really some of this does seem obvious now that we have this data, but some of these things are what the bro scientists and the old school growers have been saying for a long time. But real quick, shout out to the sponsors who help pay the bills around here. Now, if you're starting fresh or leveling up your grow, AC Infinity has kits that make it easy. Their all-in-one grow systems come stacked with nearly everything you need, from tents, lights, fans, filters, the whole setup essentially, dialed in and ready to go. At the heart of it all, the controller AI managing your entire environment in real time with smart automation leaves no guesswork, keeps things consistent, and is efficient results every time. And when you got that dialed in and it's time to pop those beans, Seedsman's got your back. From classics to heat you may have never even heard of. Their selection runs deep with trusted breeders and even their own genetics. And you could even save some money and help the channel by using discount code CLtv at checkout or CLtv AC10 over on Amazon. Now, first, it's not just Skunk One, it's kind of old school genetics in general. The land races, or things like the AK-47s, the White Widows, even the Green Cracks potentially.
These are my favorite.
And a lot of this is due to some key things, which I'll touch on here in a minute. However, some traits that you'd see for some of these old school genetics specifically would be things like lower THC, richer in terpene profiles, potentially longer flowering cycles, and oftentimes bred under natural light or HID lighting, which is high pressure sodium lighting or ceramic metal halide, depending on what kind of things you've used in the past. You may be familiar, but essentially these are going to be far red and more blue, primarily for vegging and obviously for flowering. Now, because of this, some of these characteristics and traits that these genetics have shown in the past may have been shown primarily because of the growing conditions. Also, some of the feeding regimens as well. Now, back in the day, lighting was primarily high pressure sodiums and of course metal halides as well for vegging. We used fluorescents or T5s and those worked pretty well. Everything was doing really good, but they weren't nearly as efficient for electricity bill and overall efficacy for the plant. You'd also oftentimes see more people feeding with organic soils, manure, more natural things that sometimes can bring out more of a funk with genetics versus salt feeding or high frequency fertigation with salt feeding. And if you also notice, a lot of these genetics were bred outside and they were usually utilizing the environment where they were grown in. So now things are a little different. The lighting that we're using these days is full spectrum LEDs, leaning more on the blue side of things, lacking a little bit more of that red and far red overall. We're feeding with high frequency fertigation, synthetic bottled nutrients often, and just going a little too high in that EC. A lot of people are growing in medias that aren't rich in microbiology or any sort of life at all, using things that are inert like cocoa, peat, or even rockwool. And more times than not, we're really pushing the environment as far as we can for crop steering and dialing in the VPD, which something back in the day is not what people even talked about. Now, one thing that I've noticed about older genetics in my personal experience, Goku, what is it? You got something to say? Okay, thanks for interrupting. Anywho's, most cases these genetics were utilizing things called the Emerson Effect. Now, the Emerson Effect refers to a spike in photosynthetic efficiency when plants receive both 660 nanometers of deep red and 730 nanometers of far red wavelengths simultaneously. It activates photosystem 2 and photosystem 1, boosting the rate of photosynthesis beyond what either wavelength can do alone. Now, utilizing our plant, obviously, lacking that far red with a lot of these lights won't bring out some of these characteristics that we've seen in the past or that we read about in the past. The lack of far red often results in that poor stretch, delayed flowering, and weak flower development overall with these older cultivars. Now, if you use supplemental far red light bars or utilize something like Grandmaster LED's Borg Evolution lights, which shout out to you, brother, I just got some of those. Really appreciate you hooking it up with that. I'm going to be trying those out for this next run, and that's why I'm more confident that I can find some of the funk that I'm looking for. I need to be able to grow in a similar environment with a similar way that these plants were used to, and I don't feel like a Michigan outdoor grow could necessarily bring that out like I'd want, but I also feel emulating some of that could potentially do better. Now, if you don't have that kind of light, again, supplemental lighting can help. Now, you'll notice if you don't utilize these techniques and you don't utilize this kind of technology in the garden, you may have wonky looking larvae plant material essentially, and not nice quality buds that you've seen in the past. Unfortunately, some of these old genetics don't really produce amazing bag appeal, but some of them do look better if grown correctly. Also, like I was mentioning earlier, feeding. The feeding techniques are totally different these days. Now, with nutrient uptake and microbial support, these strains evolved in low EC, microbe-rich environments. Feeding them like modern-day hybrids oftentimes results in toxicities or some really bland terps, unfortunately. Now, utilizing some living soil, something that you've had worked for a while, or adding organic inputs is likely going to do better with some of these older genetics. You don't want to push them too far and try to utilize the crop steering techniques. Now, higher EC definitely can be higher yield and potentially even higher trichome production, but at the same time, you may be risking having lower cannabinoid production. And the whole reason we're growing these is for the cannabinoids. And a lot of times the organic soil had more of a sulfur input, which was able to bring out some of these thiols. And if you're not familiar with thiols or esters, specifically thiols, I got a video that goes over that, one of these spots up here, or I'll have it linked below in the description for you. But that's one you definitely want to check out when it comes to things like this. Now, is it worth it? Is it really worth growing these and changing up your whole garden and doing everything different to be able to achieve the results to really get the flavor that you're after? Absolutely. And maybe not for everybody, but for me in particular, I truly feel that I'm after a very unique flavor. I'm after a very unique effect, and I have the ability to do it with multiple tents. That's why it's really cool to have a separate area for projects like this or for breeding projects. And if you want to stay tuned for those and follow along on this grow, make sure you watch all of my Saturday updates, because I'm live Saturday mornings right here in the garden, plants and all, and we're going to be updating every week on this skunk and seeing exactly how things are doing and if I can really find that old school classic dank. Now, if you're somebody who's after an 8-week cultivar, something that's going to finish faster and that you can really push to get a massive yield and keep it really within the same regimen that you've already had, you may not want to risk messing things up by adding in old genetics. You'll potentially just get some larvae crap that isn't very good and will leave a bad taste in your mouth literally about this kind of strain. And I do feel that that's been a big problem with people over the years, is they're getting a bad representation of this particular genetic, whether it's skunk, white widow, AK-47, some kind of a haze. These are just things that I feel were grown in different ways in different regions, and now the only way to get similar effects is to emulate that. So with that being said, it's your boy Rob from CLtv. I appreciate you watching, and if you didn't already know about it, the skunk video is over here and available to watch if you're not sure about this genetic and maybe you're interested.